country's only round of the European Rally Championship. Gregoire de Mervius, present points leader of the series after a victory in the opening round on home turf in Spa, is not here for round 2, and perhaps that's not much of a surprise. It's a specialist event that favours drivers who are used to the conditions, and after a tremendous victory in Sweden against powerful opposition from the big guns of the World Series, Mats Jonsson has set himself up as a specialist. Jonsson was the only A seed on this event, and his toughest opposition was in the shape of FISA B seed Roar Vannebo in a similar Celica. At number 5 was Birger Gundersen, a national A seed in Norway, but the pair provided Jonsson with little in the way of competition, and the super confident Swede just drove away from the rest of the field. Valti Jensen was seeded 6th. The entry list here slightly depleted as Per Eklund was unable to make the start, apparently because his Subaru developed an engine problem. But Asa Sarampar had elected to stay away and debut his new Quattro S2 on the Hankey Rally a week later, which was maybe not such a bad idea. Conditions in Norway are very similar to those in Sweden at this time of year. This event took place just 1 week later than the second round of the World Championship, and that, as we've seen, is an event which calls for some specialist skills from team and driver. Not all of the big teams and names like the event, all will contest it. Jonsson, once again undeterred by the conditions. He continued to lead, chased but hardly threatened by Roar Vannebo. In third place, the Celica of Gundersen, staying in touch with the leading pair. Conditions like these always favoured the Mazda on World Championship events, and now Bengt Torsel was making the most of deep snow that robbed the big cars of their horsepower advantage. Late on day 1, and the spectators prepare for the rigours of the night, as do the teams and drivers. Mats Jonsson ran as trouble-free in his privately entered old-shape Celica as he had in his works-supported new one in Sweden. Conditions in the darkness actually got worse, and the front men struggled on in a blizzard. Jonsson was clearing snow for his pursuers and laying tracks for them to follow, but despite the double disadvantage, he still hung on to his lead from Vannebo, Gundersen and then Torsel's Mazda. On the second day, he rolled off the ramp with a comfortable lead over the rest of the field, but the snow was still deep and still falling. And still, Jonsson made light work of it. He did this in Sweden on the World Championship last year and again this year. Driving in appalling conditions like this seems not to worry him, and certainly not to slow him. It is the same for everyone, he said. But not everyone managed it so well. In second place, the number 5 Celica of Birger Gundersen, doing well to hang on to the place and the road, coming off this stage with a flat tyre and ahead of Vannebo, which hinted at disaster. But the pair of them were locked in a talk battle for the runner-up spot, and the advantage seemed to be passing from Vannebo to Gundersen. Despite the tyre problem, Gundersen equalled Vannebo's time as they struggled for superiority. Jonsson was untouchable at the front. He'd just taken part in an epic battle in the Swedish snow and was driving as if Oriol Kankinen and McRae were still behind him. And it's doubtful if they would have caught him this time either. Vannebo was back up into an uncontested second place. No danger to Mats Jonsson, but suddenly no longer under attack. He could afford to slow down the pace because in third place was the Mazda of Torsel, a long way behind. Even Torsel wasn't without his problems as he pushed himself and the 3-2-3 as hard as he could. But he was 5 minutes adrift of second place with little chance of improving on third, especially with close calls like this one. The big struggle for second had been defused by Gundersen's problem, but the rally was almost over. There was still a chance for second place. He was giving it all he could. No prizes for guessing what they were saying in Norwegian. Disaster for Gundersen on the last but one stage, and victory again for Janssen. 2 turnouts, 2 wins, both in deep snow. He finishes ahead of Vannebo, Thorsel, Jansrud winning Group N. We'll take a break there. International Motorsport's back with more action in a couple of minutes. Don't go away.
Second successive year. The route majored on Ajaccio, and the first 8 grueling stages were held